Good morning again. Thank you all for coming back for a second breakout session. I hope that you've enjoyed this so far. Please definitely fill out the evaluation because this is our second year conducting this program, and we made a few tweaks based on the feedback that you all gave last year. So we want to continue improving this program and even thinking about additional opportunities that we can offer to the specialist community. So if you have ideas, please let us know in the evaluation and be honest and yeah, just give us whatever feedback you desire.
Like very dregs of the earth, and
Well,
okay, maybe not that honest.
Make that more available.
so we did not add this session last year, but this is new. Based on a lot of the questions that we received last year, we thought it would be a good idea to have a breakout session focused on just specific academic HR related items as it relates to your positions or just anything that you want to know about the university in general. We can the will is yours. So I'm Melanie Trowbridge of Academic HR.
And Terry Curry. Well, I was just going to give the mic to Carmela since she did such a good job.
Yes, you were fabulous.
Yes.
So one of my concerns about this position in general academics, I feel like this is really loud right now, is that, so I don't know, I'm research-based, but I'm not self-funded. And the president has continued to say that she wants to cut 1% of these like non-research positions. Yeah, that's my question. Like, it keeps me up at night. So I don't know what to do with that. And you don't have to have an answer.
I don't know if this is good news or just news. So this cutting 1% has been going on for at least the last 20 years. Every year, let me rephrase, in a good year, the general fund budget of every unit gets cut 1%. In a bad year, it gets cut more than 1%. So this year there was an additional 1% cut. In part, that 1% is redistributed to units who they make proposals on the academic side. They make proposals in the planning process with the provost, and so 1% is taken, but that money goes back and may not go back in the same, probably won't go back in the same format, and your unit may get more than 1% or it may get less than 1% coming back, but it's redistributed every year. So it's originally it was called the efficiency factor reduction, and we'd be more efficient, but it is more painful every year that it has to be done, but it has gone on for a long time.
Terry, do you want to make any kind of statements about sort of the state's budget and what's allocated to higher ed and how that has changed in the past 20 years? Just for some context.
Yes, she looks at me for context because I've been around forever. And
can do it, but.
And when I started at Michigan State as a new assistant professor, the state covered about 80% of the general fund budget of Michigan State, and now it's like 20% and declining. We were at a presentation that the president did yesterday, and the prediction is looking at sort of trends nationally in terms of state funding for higher education, that in the year 2059, the state appropriation will be zero. And I said, well, I probably won't be here in 2059, but no. And again, it's a recurring issue with the lack of state support for higher education. It's not just Michigan, it's something that's going on nationally, and hence the capital campaign, the push for more externally funded research, more entrepreneurial activities. More and more of your units are engaged in online courses and off-campus courses as additional ways of generating revenues. The increasing number of out-of-state students, it's using all of those things to find additional sources of revenue, because no one believes that the state appropriation is going to turn around. We figure in the budget at best there will be an inflationary increase in the state appropriation. Yeah, where it helps a lot is in student scholarships. Um, as someone who worked in development for a while, as you know, you get money from donors, but it's targeted to very specific areas. So they give you money for named professorships because they want to create a program in this, that, or the other. It's usually not available to use for just general purposes. But one of the things that we've done at Michigan State over a long period of time is, yes, every year tuition goes up, but every year the university puts more money aside out of the general fund to provide financial aid for students. And so one of the big pushes in the capital campaign is to increase the funds that are available for student financial aid, for scholarships and the like. And so if there is less money out of the general fund going for that because of development activities, then there's more money in the general fund that go for other purposes. One of the huge advantages that the University of Michigan has is that they have this huge endowment, and so they are able to fund scholarships and use it to recruit students in ways that we aren't able to do. And again, the historical perspective, when you walk in front of the administration building, you'll see the statue of John Hanna, who was the president that really grew this from the agricultural college to Michigan State University. The only criticism I ever hear from him is that he did not believe in development. He said Michigan State is a state university and we will not go out and ask people for money. And he was very effective in going to the legislature to ask for money to build a place. And so we've been behind in development at Michigan State, our peers in the Big Ten and elsewhere. So I think this is what, our third capital campaign. And the other places have been doing it for decades and decades. Yes, ma'am.
So I started out in fixed term. Wanted to get into continuing. Had to move into a different job to get that status. Heard rumblings from other people that, some people had that first year wave because they've already been working for so long and have this proven history or whatever. And when I was first getting hired in, they thought they could waive it, and then they found out from HR they couldn't. But then other people have also said your unit has to petition to waive so you can get. What's the word on that?
Can I say just a couple of
Absolutely.
contextual things, just for the will of the group? So as Terry mentioned in his presentation, fixed-term positions are for a fixed term, typically 1 year at a time. Continuing system appointments start out in a probationary appointment for 3 years. If at your second year you get a review, if that review is successful, you get reappointed into a second probationary appointment for another 3 years. And so what Stratton is referring to is sometimes when people move from fixed term to continuing system or from one department to another, depending upon how much time you've been here or if the role is similar, or a variety of factors, some units will ask academic human resources to waive the first probationary appointment and just appoint the person into one probationary appointment. So there's not the 6 years, it's just the 3 year. Is that what you're referring to? Yeah. So what was the other part of your question? Like what's the word?
If it's option, because in some spaces I sit in and they say, oh, you're missing out because you're going through, but I just wasn't sure because I don't like to hear rumors.
It is very much individualized. So from the unit's perspective, they're making this continuing commitment. And if you think about the continuing commitment, most units would say, I'd rather make that based upon more information rather than less information, because this continuing status that you're earning is in my unit. And it's going to be difficult if we decide it didn't work out or we don't have the funding to do something. And so there is often units are saying, I want to make sure that I have enough of an opportunity to see you work with students in this field, for example, in this discipline or this kind of environment. Are there cases in which they come to us and they say, we'd like to waive a probationary period, and we say yes, absolutely, but it's the unit that initiates that. So I would talk to my unit administrator, my department chair, about doing it. If they are uncertain or if they have questions, have them contact us. Sometimes, and what I never want to see have happen is you don't have the opportunity to do that because your unit administrator, your department chair is new and doesn't know that that's a possibility. So it is a possibility. They'd have to work with us to make it happen, but you'd have to work with them to get it started.
One thing, and let me just mention one more thing, and then we'll go to you and then the gentleman in the plaid shirt. So one thing that came out of the program last year is just really an understanding of what department chairs do and do not know about the specialist system. And so Terry and I, along with Academic Advancement Network, are really working to provide more education to our department chairs so that they understand the role, they understand the system, just like the things that you're learning today. We know that we need to go out in some cases and do some of that education as well. So again, that was part of the feedback that we received last year. So it's to Terry's point, you have a new department chair who may not be as familiar with the system. We are working to make sure that people are getting educated so that they know how to properly mentor and help you all develop. Yes, ma'am.
I think that also speaks to the broader issue about, I wouldn't call it double standards, I think it's kind of two levels here, right? That the continuing status, we have to be evaluated individually on our performance in the job, but it's actually the continuing appointment that stays in the unit. So if I've been, reappointed, which I have, I won't say exactly how many, 20 plus years in a fixed term position, right? When they never had continuing appointments in our area. But if I move, across campus, somebody may come in with not much experience at all into a unit in a continuing position, that they didn't have to show this record of, I have never tried to Schedule C, but I'm peaked to learn how to do it. But, if I move from fixed term, or I have continuing, if I had continuing, I'd go to a fixed term appointment, would we go through that whole thing again for promotion, or?
Yeah, and the answer is potentially. Here are the easiest cases. If you have 20 years as a fixed term specialist in a unit. If that unit decides that our funding is stable, this is going to continue, we'd like to make this a continuing appointment system specialist, and they ask us to waive the probationary period, we're going to say yes. And in many cases like that, they'd ask to waive both probationary periods. You've been doing this for 20 years. Why make you go through this process? It's when somebody moves to a unit that's different, and maybe an assignment that's different, or expectations that are different. That new unit wants the opportunity to see that you can perform and be exceptional in that new setting. So.
Yes, sir.
I guess mine goes along with what everyone else is saying. I went from a fixed to a continual, and then when we did the Schedule C last year, it shocked me that I couldn't count 5 years of these programs, this curriculum, and all this stuff, and it's almost like you start over. So I don't know, how do you give that credit, or can that be added to where additional work done previously or something, where it gives you at least something to hold on? Because, I did a lot of work. I did develop like a on-air webinar that was once a month, kind of like a broadcast for 3 years. Put together these different programs and different conferences and things like that, and then to come into the position I'm in now, that stuff had no value. And it was kind of like, okay, so it's almost like you have 5 years of not having done anything.
And it shouldn't be the case that has no value. When we look at the records, and I look at every one of the Form Cs that comes forward, we're looking at the entirety of your career, what you have accomplished over your career. And if some of that was in a fixed term basis, we're going to look at that. Just as when we have the same conversation with tenure system faculty, I spent time at another institution, can I count that here? What we don't have is a system that says, all right, you got 2 years here, and so we're going to subtract 2 out of your 4. we will look at the entirety of your accomplishments, but we still have that 3-year period. It may be, and here's a question that didn't come up, but I'll answer it anyway. Can one skip some years? It says 3 and 3. I've got a record that's such that I want to go up in 4. And the answer is, yeah, you can if your record warrants it. Now, the far-fetched hypothetical, in the middle of your probationary appointment, you win the Nobel Prize. Okay, we'll skip a few years and you can get the status immediately. We do look at the record, but again, whenever we're doing granting somebody continuing status, this is the university and the unit saying, we're making an indefinite commitment to you, to your being employed here. And so we generally would like to do it with more information rather than less information. I'd rather have a few years rather than a few weeks to make that long-term commitment. If the jobs that you are coming from, the job that you're coming from, the assignments that you had are more similar to the one that you're moving into now, then it's easier to make a case that what you did in the past is going to be a good predictor of what you're going to continue to do in the new job. To the extent that they're more dissimilar, then it's harder to make that prediction, so you need to see more information. Yes, ma'am.
I think I can talk long enough. So to piggyback off that, say you're going into a new position, and you are doing something very similar, but the department's not on board with granting you that. Is that something that then you can go to academic HR and have that conversation of, I went to the department, they're not on board with this. Is there an opportunity to kind of have that support from the department when before telling from academic HR going down to the department and saying, this is something we'd like for you to consider to kind of support us as academic specialists?
Yeah, would we have a conversation with the unit? Absolutely. Now, whether or not we would support it, we would let the unit know that this is something that happens, that here's why it's worth considering. Unless there's some evidence that they did it for you and they wouldn't do it for this other person, we leave the units a lot of discretion.
So my situation is a little different. A couple of years ago, my unit inquired about putting me into the continuing position, and that they were told, I think by HR, that that I could be put into that system and that it was just simply checking off a different box on my reappointment form. And so obviously some sort of information was lost in translation there and something was missed because I am in fact still fixed term. And so I was curious as to, in this situation, how you would recommend going about resolving a situation like that.
You can send me an email directly so that I can remember to follow up. The request typically will come to Academic Human Resources to reposition a position from fixed term to continuing system. I do have a set of questions that I will ask because I don't, because, you know, so in terms of funding, for example, what is the long-term plan for this position? I'll ask those very specific questions because I don't want to put you in a situation or the department in a situation where they have to come back to us 3 years later and say, oh, we need to end this position. Well, so before we move a position from fixed term to continuing, we just really want to make sure that there's a long-term plan. So it really is just as simple as a request to Academic Human Resources. But we never would have said, check a box to change it. So I don't know where that came from. That may be some myth or urban legend or some sort of rumor or something. But
So if you don't go through with the continuing stuff, what happens? So you go through your first year, you're doing what you want to do, maybe you're just like, I don't want this. Do you just revert to a fixed term, or do you just sit as a continuing that's not going through the process?
So are you asking if I decide that I do not want to go through the review process for continuing status? Please keep in mind that when you are appointed in the continuing system that your appointments are probationary, which means they have an end date. So if you, Stratton, decide that you are, I'm not going to do this anymore, then your appointment will end, and it doesn't revert to anything.
It reverts to unemployment.
I was going to say that, but I stopped myself.
But I asked because there are people that I've talked with that have said this doesn't sound like it's completely worth it, right? If you go through this and what you get out of it, if you need to transition, I'll say like in the advising community, in certain places, there's not a lot of progress to be made. You come in as an advisor, there's one director, one maybe assistant director, and then that's it. So if you want to grow and be promoted and increase your revenue and your skill set, then you have to move. So if you go to places that say we're not going to take a continuing status, you gain something in one area, but then,
Sure.
you know, so I think people
Yeah.
I've talked to have asked about this. I just wasn't sure what happened if
Yeah.
somebody just said I don't.
I would suggest to someone, you're in a better position at the next unit to ask for continuing status if you have continuing status. The units are often they're sympathetic to the fact that someone has continuing status, and again the humane side of them would often not like to tell somebody you're giving that up. So if that's a situation in which they might be more likely to come and petition us to have the probationary period, one of them waived or both of them waived. So I wouldn't simply say, well, I'm just going to not go through with the review. I think the simple fact that you have continuing status will help down the road, even though it's not a one-to-one transfer.
Just real quick, I just wanted to confirm that senior, if one was to achieve senior specialist, that does stay with the individual as they move units?
Yes.
Okay.
So.
That's not something that stays with the unit if I was to move.
Yeah. Yeah, important point. When you get the title, you earn the title senior academic specialist, you remain a senior academic specialist. If you move to a new position, you're still a senior academic specialist. Now, you might move to a new position where you don't have continuing status, but you still are a senior academic specialist.
Could you maybe speak just very briefly about how to do that? Is there a Form C for that? Or what?
For senior status,
Yes.
Form C.
Yes. So if you are fixed term in a fixed term appointment, you can apply to be promoted to senior specialist after 5 years in a fixed term appointment.
As a fixed term, you can be senior as well.
Yes, you can be a senior academic specialist even though you are a fixed term. Because again, we have people who have 25 years as a fixed term academic specialist. They can still be a senior specialist. So Mel. So Melanie, here's a question that someone raised with me earlier. So I'm a continuing systems specialist, and I've gone through my first probationary appointment, and I'm now going through my second probationary appointment. So now I'm up to 5 years, and I'm up for continuing status. Can I also ask for senior academic specialist at the same time?
I know that we've had cases of that, but our policy does say, where people have requested both, but our policy does say after years of sustained achievement
Excellent.
and excellence. So I'm going to turn that back to you.
Isn't that kind of contrary, like, so you got 6 years to get, and then you only need 5 years to get senior? And so this is like kind of the loop in my head. So it takes 6 years to get through the probationary to get continuing, like, whatever that is. But that doesn't go with you. But if I take 5 years and I get senior academic specialist, that goes with me? Yes. So why don't I do the 5 years?
Let's back up. So out of 849 academic specialists, 7.4% are senior academic specialists. So it is not very often, and it's not automatic that someone becomes a senior academic specialist. So the likelihood that I get appointed as a fixed term specialist and 5 years later I become a senior academic specialist, it just that there has not been a record of sustained excellence usually, even though the 5-year is the minimum.
Let me try to, excuse me. Let me try to explain it or clarify it a little better. I think if you look at it from this standpoint, if you're a professor no matter what, then you move to associate professor, then you move to full professor. So that's the thing. It's the clarification of your job itself, whereas you might be in the fixed term, but then if you went to the continuing status, that's a different thing. You got to go through some paperwork, right, because that's based on the position. So let's say you have a continuing status, then you go through probationary, and then you achieve continuing status. So that's that. But that's the way to look at it. If you look at if you're a professor, then associate, then full professor. So it's not that one supersedes the other.
Just to add to Dale's point, one of the things that we've been trying to do for a number of years is to break down some of the class differences on campus. And so this year when we did the orientation, there wasn't a, well, here's the orientation for specialists and here's the orientation for tenure system faculty. It's one for everybody. We're trying to break down, here's what we do for fixed term people and here's what we do for continuing system specialists. So there is a promotion process for fixed term faculty. They can become an associate professor and a full professor just like tenure system faculty can. For academic specialists, even though you're fixed term, you can become a senior academic specialist just like those in the continuing appointment system can. Yes, there will always be differences, and it's about funding and job security and length of appointment, but to the extent we can. And the Academic Advancement Network, part of the reason it's no longer called Faculty and Organizational Development is because academic specialists looked at that title and said it doesn't speak to us. It doesn't say we are included. So the Academic Advancement Network is about everybody that's engaged in the academic enterprise. So yeah, there are some differences, but we're trying as much as we can to break some of those down. Yes.
So you said that only 7.9% of academic specialists have the senior academic specialists, but and most of those have the 20, like extended period. But it's because most of us don't know that you can apply after 5 years, because that's kind of like percentage. So I'm a data person. So like, is it because because it could be there's two sides of that coin, right? Is it because people are applying and getting rejected, or people getting recommended not to apply, or is it because you really do need that 20 plus? And why wouldn't you then change the 5-year minimum to a higher minimum?
Okay. So the Office of Human Resources, not academic HR, but central HR, with whom we work very closely, when people hit the 5-year mark and they are eligible to apply for senior specialist, they the unit gets sent a list of those people. And so those conversations should be happening between the supervisor and those who become eligible to apply for senior specialist. So I don't think it's a matter of...
I feel like if there's a rule that's 5 years and I don't get it, then that's a ding on my record that says really I haven't been performing. It's sort of like, like if you've been a faculty member for 6 years and you get tenure, like that's the, so it's sort of like if this is in place for 5 years and you don't get it, then that kind of tells me that maybe I wasn't performing. So why isn't it pushed out, or we have like junior, senior, I don't know, or different like stages? Because I feel like if my unit does get a letter that I've been there 5 years and I don't get it, then what have I done wrong in that 5 years to not get that promotion?
Well, I don't think you should think about it in terms of what have I done wrong, but it's, we talk about like developing your career and building your portfolio and developing your, I guess your expertise and the outputs of the work and showing evidence of the impact of your work. And so, I don't know that it's framing it as, oh, I didn't get senior specialist, there must be something wrong with me. I don't think that's the right sort of...
Well, no, but I think that's how it's framed from an HR perspective. So if it really is 5 years, I should develop the expertise and all the things on the things that have been mentioned to move me up. If you're saying in 5 years I should be ready for that.
And I guess I'd say we're not saying in 5 years you should be ready. We're saying that you have to have at least 5 years before you can even be considered.
And it's not an automatic either. So if you, at the 5-year point, you become eligible and you don't think that your record is ready, or your mentors and your supervisor are telling you that, you know what, your record may not warrant going up for a senior at this time, then that's feedback. I think that's important feedback. So it's not an automatic that you have to go in 5 years.
And just from my personal experience, I've been in this position for 14 years, and I've had ongoing conversations with my chair about what's my time like to put together Form C, because it takes a lot of time, and how is my sustained excellence in performance measure up with what they're looking for. So we've put it off and put it off. It hasn't been right from a timeline perspective. I don't have the time to commit to put it together. And they said, well, you know, you're in the middle of starting a couple of new programs. Let's see where those go in the next years, because that will help you provide a better package. And so I'm just now starting to explore the Form C, and hopefully we'll be going up for senior specialists here in the near future. But it's been an ongoing conversation with my unit for the last 5 or 7 years to kind of talk about what timing looks right. I know that's one individual perspective, but that's kind of how I've done it.
Thank you.
I kind of have a similar experience. I've been here for more than 10 years now, and I'm just getting to the point where I would consider applying for that, and we have big projects that are coming up and that, and so this is something that I'm going to discuss with my supervisor. The other issue, though, is that we're a very small unit, and I don't necessarily think that the support within the unit, I don't think they have this information and know about it. And so that's why I'm coming to things like this to learn, so I can advocate for myself as well.
And reach out as well to if your department is small, and many of the departments have very few academic specialists, but at the college level, there often is someone who is more knowledgeable about this, or at sort of the next level up. And again, you can always reach out to our office as well.
And to that point, is it reaching out to your office or our particular departments or units to say, like, okay, for folks who are in our unit or other folks who have gone up for senior academic specialists, like, what does sort of the portfolio look like? What does sustained excellence look like? What are the patterns of that? And do we have access to that so we can judge our own and say, like, oh yeah, I'm nowhere near that. Like, it may be 5 years, but I need another 10 before I feel like I'm good, right?
Definitely your department is a good measurement for that, but there's also some samples of Form C packets on the website that's on the bottom of your agenda. But in terms of comparing yourself to your colleagues in your unit with very specific measures that they're using to look at your work, I think that's probably more important to look at from a comparison standpoint.
I'd agree, but also with the caveat that in some cases you're the only specialist in your department, and so elevating it up to the college level where there's the opportunity to get a perspective that's broader than just your unit is something that I would do. Yeah. Hold on, Oprah.
Thank you. When I was listening to your questions, I just kept thinking it's exactly what we're asking of our students, to advocate for yourself. You have to advocate for yourself. And you can't really wait for an opportunity to come knocking at your door. So you come to programs like this, you interact with your colleagues, and you have to find out what's available to you. And it doesn't mean that if you don't get it in 5 years that you're not good. It just means that if you have the information, you do something with it. And you have to get feedback from your department as well. And I don't know if I necessarily always agree with comparing myself to someone else, because I feel that I'm unique and there's only one Carmela, right? And that's a little arrogant, but sometimes you have to be that way in promoting yourself. And then you have to create opportunities. If your job description says that you're doing A, B, C, and D, but you know you're capable of something else, you can take that information to your department and you can propose ideas, because sometimes, just like you, they get busy, they get swamped, and it's not that they're not trying to promote you, but it's not the first thing that comes to their mind. So just remember that.
Great advice.
I'm going to give you advice that might get you in trouble, but it is easier to beg forgiveness than to ask permission. There are a lot of things that your units will find valuable and your chair, your director, they're not even thinking about it, I say just go and do it. And the likelihood that somebody's going to be upset is pretty low, and if they are, then apologize and move forward.
We have just a few more minutes before folks will start coming back in to wrap up. So if you have additional questions, where's Jill? Jill, can they put those questions in the evaluation? Is there space to say, you know what, I didn't get these questions answered? Okay. Please, and Jill is extraordinarily efficient at making sure that we follow up with you and get the answers to your questions. Thank you, Jill. So if there are other things that you wanted to ask that you didn't get a chance to ask, please put it in the evaluation and we will definitely follow up.
But again, if you don't get any other message, talk to your chair, talk to whoever your supervisor is if you have questions about any of these, and if you aren't getting the answers that you need there, either talk to your dean's office, the next level, or feel free to contact our office. And we have confidential conversations all the time with faculty and academic staff about issues. So we are happy to do that.
Yeah, there are people in this room who've been to see us, and we welcome it. Our doors and our phones are always open, so please do come see us. Thank you. Maybe give people one more minute to get in from their. Okay, I'm hanging in.
Yeah, go right ahead.
Thank you. That was really good.
Our pleasure.
Yeah, it was really helpful.
All right, gang, we're going to Plan B. Plan B. I think everybody that was going to come back has come back. So, thank you all for being here. Please take the time to complete the evaluation. Pay attention to the emails you get from ASAC, and feel free. All of their meetings are open, and they welcome your advice and comments. And then any suggestions you have on what we might do to improve this or be more supportive to academic specialists, let us know. So, again, thanks. Have a great rest of the day. Oh, and thank you, Jill Bryant, for pulling all of this together.